funny. I've been talking for like several minutes and now that's all gone. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you for letting me know you couldn't hear me. I gotta love first world problems, right? Okay. How's that for volume? Is that better? Always challenging with technology. Okay. How's that? Can you guys hear me okay now? Still could be louder. Alright, let's see if we can do something about that. Sorry about this, guys. I totally tested this the other day and it was fine. And you think that it would still be fine, but of course it's not. Yeah, it seems when I turn the volume up, my microphone gets kind of stupider. No, I appreciate you guys letting me know that the volume wasn't working. Because it sounded like it was working on my end, but did not. Alright. Yeah, I'm getting the buzzing too. I'm just trying to figure out why that's going on. Might be the microphone, unfortunately. Okay, hang on here. I'm gonna try a different microphone input. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Oh, that seems really loud now. Okay, how are we doing for volume now? Alright, are we still getting buzzing? I'm not hearing buzzing, but that doesn't mean you guys may not be hearing it. I think it might have been my cable. Sorry about that. Okay, so now that we know that everybody couldn't hear me for the first couple of minutes, I'm sorry to say. Sorry about that, guys. Let's start from the beginning then. Let's go back for a minute here. So thanks everybody for joining me for my first episode of Let's Talk About I was saying I was inspired to do this show because there's a lot of people out there struggling right now with COVID and with their relationships and either seeing their partner or not seeing their partner. Combine all that with the usual challenges that people have when it comes to sex and relationships, and it's hard. The divorce rates are skyrocketing and stuff. So I wanted to do this show to offer a way to help people, and I really encourage you guys to share. In terms of COVID, because of the situation, I am going to be broadcasting 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, from 8 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So please encourage people to access, call in, get help. And, the more we can share this, the further it can go, the more people know that it's there and that they can call in and get help. So, we all do our little parts and hopefully make things a little bit better. So I have... So just some guidelines for commenting. I totally encourage people to comment. I really, really would like us to be a community. But I know that some people not saying anybody here, but some people sort of come on and they troll, and that's not really helpful. That's not really what we're trying to do here. So when people are calling in with their problems, please remember when you're commenting, think about, is it true? Is it going to be helpful? Is it going to be inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? We really want people to have a good experience when they call in and feel heard and get the help that they need. So bearing that in mind, once again, we're going to open it up for people to call in when they're ready, if they want to call in. Sorry, as I look away from the screen, because I just got to see your comments anyway. It looks like we still got people jumping on, which is great. So a little bit about me. I am a Vancouver-based sex educator. I published a book, Got Consent, which is all about sexual consent. And I have spent the last number of years providing sex ed and I was going to say alternative sex ed, but it's not really alternative. I also provide education around BDSM and kinks, as well as more mainstream stuff around like sexual health, STDs, relationships, love, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, lots of good stuff. Hoping we get some people calling in. Although it's the first show, so who knows? We got to get that that word out there that people can call in. I really appreciate everybody joining me today, taking time in your busy schedules. I'm just checking to see how many people we got on. Quite a few jumping on, which is great. So before I realized that the microphone wasn't working, I was talking about some tips, things that people can do to sort of get through this time with their partners, whether you're with your partner or not with your partner. Sorry, got distracted. So if you're living with your partner, a couple of tips is remember to take some personal space. Sometimes when we are closed in with someone, because if we feel like we can't leave of our own choice, or if we feel like our choice is impacted, it can actually be a bit of a challenge, because we actually feel like our tempers are shorter. Well, we don't feel like our tempers are shorter, but our tempers can get shorter. It can be easy to be irritated with our partner or be more easily frustrated by things that we feel that we don't have as much control over. So a couple of good tips is just remember to take your own space. A lot of couples or a lot of people have been transitioned to working at home, which means, if you're staying with your partner and you've both been transitioned to work at home, then you're both around each other a lot more. But you can always try setting up your offices in different areas. If you have the space to do so, try doing so in different rooms. That can give you a little bit of space. And just remember, you don't have to do every single thing together. Definitely do stuff together and definitely chat and have fun, but you don't have to be spending every single moment together just because you're both home. It's can be a good time to enjoy some single activities like reading or maybe watching a show. I mean, you guys can do that together, but don't feel pressured to be always on for your partner, I guess is what it means. And just remember too that while whatever stress you may be feeling, it can be really good to communicate that stuff with your partner. So far, no calls yet. That's all right. Hopefully somebody will call in with some questions or need help with something. In the meantime, like I said earlier, I really do appreciate you guys sharing the feed, and it's helped me get the word out that this resource is available. I know there's not a lot of free resources available for counseling and support especially when it comes to relationships and stuff in, the everyday sense. And during this time when more things are shut down, I think having somewhere you can call and get some help is pretty important. Since we don't have any callers yet, does anybody have any questions or thoughts that they want to type into the chat? No, not yet, eh? All right. Well, that's okay. Sometimes it can be hard to ask questions if you're just, you know, hit with it, right? If you don't have something specific that you want to ask. Thank you. That's okay. You can be busy at work, and I appreciate you guys being here. It sucks that my comment box doesn't seem to be working. I thought this was going to pop up here, but it doesn't seem to be liking that, which kind of sucks. Let's see if we can fix that, actually, while we're waiting for someone to call in. Things never seem to work the way you want them to the first time, of course. Okay, hopefully that'll fix the chat bot or chat box. Okay, so we do have one question here. So any tips for people restarting sex with poly partners? Increasing the bubble is scary. Yes, it would be scary, especially in this time. As with any kind of relationship, open and honest and communication is really some of the most important tools in your toolbox. This is true in monogamous relationships. This is true in any kind of relationship, but especially in poly relationships, because there's all these kind of feelings and things that people have. It depends on how your poly relationship is set up. Lots of people do different kinds of things, and they have different rules for their poly relationship. So it does depend a little bit on what sort of rules you guys already have in place. I would say just sort of, I mean, I always recommend certain things. You just want to sort of assess your level of risk, right? Everybody's going to have a different level that they're comfortable with. And what's right for you may not be right for someone else, or what you and your partner feel is an acceptable level of risk may not be okay for, you know, another partner that you might be introducing. So just having that frank conversation about level of risk, particularly with COVID and, you know, other, I guess, I want to say not normal, but things that we used to be, well, people should still be concerned about STIs, but, you know, things around like sexual health and stuff like that. So negotiating or, you know, starting to negotiate and expand that bubble again, just take things nice and slow. I think with COVID, a lot of dating is going to look really different now than it used to. And I think a lot of things about hookup culture is going to change. A lot of things about poly culture is probably going to change a little, maybe quite not as dramatically, because there's always been some good communication poly circles. But, you know, sorry, just taking a look at the comments. But yeah, so sort of seeing where people are feeling with their level of comfort with the current situation. We've had a lot of restrictions lifted or starting to lift, and more going to be starting to lift, but we're not quite through the woods yet as far as COVID goes. So just making sure that your partner and partners are going to be comfortable and taking it slow, I guess, would be my main tips. You're welcome. I hope I hope you feel that that answered your question. And I kind of rambled on there a little bit, but I'm a big advocate for communication, clearly. That's good, because I tend to ramble. It's just sort of stuff that comes out of my head. Just comes out of my head. But yeah. It's weird that my chat box still doesn't seem to be working. The chat should be popping up so you guys can see it too, but for some reason it's not popping up in the newsfeed. But I guess that is another technological glitch we will sort out, hopefully before tomorrow. Yeah, so does anybody else have any questions right now while we're waiting for some calls to come in? Hopefully somebody calls in. I promise I don't bite. I'm not that scary. And, you know, we already established that we're gonna create a nice, welcoming community here with lots of positive comments. So don't be shy about calling in. At least I'm not asking you to video in. It's just gonna be your voice. No other questions right now? Nope, that's okay. Okay, well, while we're waiting for someone to call in, why don't I share some tips on effective communication? So lots of people, when they're talking, they often feel, and, you know, comment if you feel this, you've had conversations where you felt this way, but they often feel that whoever they're speaking to is simply just waiting for their turn to talk. This is not a new phenomenon. Lots of people feel this way because the reality is that a lot of the time when people are talking, we are actually spending more time thinking about what we're going to say than we actually are listening. So one of the hardest parts about communication is actually staying engaged with what your partner or your friend or whoever you're listening to, staying engaged with what they're actually saying and helping them feel listened to. Because even if you are hearing them, if the person you're talking to doesn't feel like you're listening, it doesn't matter what you say at that point. If they don't feel like they've been heard, that is going to color everything that you say in their mind. So even if what you say is correct or is appropriate to, you know, an appropriate thing to what they just said, if they feel like they didn't really, you weren't really listening, then, you know, that perception is going to color everything. And it's usually what escalates fights with couples is, you know, somebody's like, oh, you're not listening. You're just saying the first thing that comes to mind, or you're not really understanding me. You're not really hearing me. And that's a source of a lot of friction in a lot of relationships. So one of the best ways that you can do that is to really engage those active listening skills. Now, I'm not just saying like things like, you know, don't say and yeah a lot. I mean, it's okay if you do that, but if you're excessively doing that, one, that can annoy some people, and it can also feel like some people have described it like, oh, I feel like that person's too busy actively listening to be actually listening. So one of the good ways that you can make someone feel like you're actually listening and you're hearing what they're saying is to rephrase what they've said. And you can do this in your own words, or you can actually just say the words that they said. Now, depending on who you're talking to, you might want to rephrase. But when you rephrase, make sure that you're not saying things like, what I'm hearing is, I think you mean, you know, like avoid saying stuff like that, because what you're doing is you're inserting the word I into it and you're making it about you. Now, nobody really intentionally thinks that you're making it about you. Do you know what I mean? But on a subconscious level, when you're like, I think that you're saying, or I'm hearing this, even though lots of people have been taught to communicate this way, what can actually happen is, and it can actually make people feel like they're being judged because you're saying I. It's no longer about what they're saying, and it's no longer about what they're communicating. It's about what you think they're communicating. And if somebody's feeling defensive, that can actually be a little extra triggering, and it can continue to escalate things, because then all of a sudden they feel like you are just trying to take control of the conversation. So when you rephrase things, try and avoid things like what I'm hearing, I think that, right? Just make it simple. You could say things like, it seems like, or it appears that. If somebody's really upset about something, it appears that you're really upset about this. Yes, that's a fairly obvious statement, but it's one of those things that people can all of a sudden, oh yeah, I am upset about it. Right? So it's something that can move the conversation along. It's an observation noting that, you're paying attention to what's happening with them, right? Which is the important part. They want to feel listened to. They want to feel heard. So it's those simple little things that can actually help de-escalate a fight, improve our communication. Even when we're not in a fight, and we're just having a casual conversation with our friend, our lover, or, whoever, and we use this technique, it can actually help people open up a little bit more, right? So if you're talking with somebody who isn't a good talker, for example, maybe your partner's always been super tight-lipped, and, it's hard to get them to open up and just sort of chat about things. If they can be making a statement or a question out of something they said, can actually encourage them to open up a bit more. So for example, if you were talking to your partner and you said, hey, how was your day? And your partner said, well, it was okay. Well, you could respond, it was okay. Turn it into a question. Be inquisitive. It sort of asks for more information without telling them they didn't provide enough information, if that makes sense. And it can encourage them to open up. And as long as we're staying inquisitive and open with our partners and wanting to know more about them, people tend to open up because people want to be heard and understood. People want to form that connection. So that's a little helpful tip about improving your communication skills. Looks like we've got a few people watching, which is great. Thanks everybody so much for joining us. Once again, please share. We have not had any calls yet, but that's okay. Although I just double checking my phone thing to make sure it's working properly. Although once again, I tested it before I got on the air, but you never know with these things. Technology never works the way you want it to. So I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind, Amanda, but I'm just going to read out your comments since you're on Facebook. Not everybody's going to see it. And my comment thing, for some reason, isn't displaying the comments. So, Amanda, thank you so much for commenting. You're just saying that you deal with this a lot and making those kind of mistakes. And at times it can feel like you're attacked. Yeah, so, it's a big thing, right? How we communicate with someone and how we help them feel heard is a big piece in keeping our relationships healthy and keeping communications open. Because definitely, if your partner has ever made you feel attacked, or if you ever feel like they haven't heard you or really care about how you're doing, what's the likelihood that you're going to open up, right? It's not going to be very high. So, part of successful relationships is really just making sure that we are setting ourselves up for success, that we're, connecting with our partners in new ways. This works for friendships too, any kind of relationship really, but it's especially useful in romantic ones where, we're exposing ourselves to a lot more vulnerability than we would in other types of relationships. I was really hoping somebody would call in. I guess that was kind of optimistic for my very first show. But that's okay. There's always tomorrow. We are broadcasting again tomorrow, so please make sure to share, encourage people to call in. It's all about helping people, right? And I'll make sure I have some more tips for you guys tomorrow, in case we don't have anybody call in. So since we're still talking about communication, another piece about keeping communication open and effective is, and this sort of relates more to like escalated fights or when somebody's really upset about something. So you remember how I said you can say like things like, oh, you seem really upset, or this seems really important. Sometimes when we label things or when we acknowledge those negative emotions, it actually is a lot easier for us to deal with them. Have you ever noticed that when you feel really upset about something, the more you push it away, the less that actually works? You know, you're like, oh, I'm not upset about this. I'm not upset about this. I'm not upset about this. And then you get more and more and more and more and more upset about it. You know, you're trying to push it away. You're trying to get over it as quickly as possible. But all it's really doing is actually making it bigger in your mind. And the reason that happens is actually it's a neurological thing. You know, certain neurons in our brains are firing, and negative emotions, and they've done this, they've tested this with like functional MRIs, which I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but they're machines that measure brain activity. So measuring brain activity, they've done certain exercises with people and realized that when you acknowledge a negative emotion, or a negative emotion is acknowledged, it automatically diminishes. So if you're in a fight with somebody and they say something like, I don't know, it's hard to think of an example off the top of my head, but just, you know, they're super upset about something, they're ranting and raving about it. You can start off, you know, acknowledging that this is important. So you could say something like, you know, this seems really important, or you seem really upset right now. And, you know, they'll probably respond with something like, well, hell yeah, I'm upset. Or, you know, yes, this is important. And then you can follow up with a question, you know, like, this is really important, right? Get them to ask more or get them open and talking and more information. The other thing too is that when somebody says to you, like, you seem really upset right now, our natural reaction is to think internally about it. We don't usually think, like, it's not a conscious decision, but it's one of the things that we automatically do. Like, we just all of a sudden are like, oh, am I really upset? Is this really important? And it sort of happens so fast that a lot of the time we don't even realize that we do it or that it happens. But it can be a good tool for when you're having a fight with your partner. If your partner's really upset about it, you know, I'm not saying like call out, and you have to be careful with your tone, because of course tone makes a huge difference, particularly in a fight. You know, saying like, you seem really upset about this is a lot different than saying, you seem really upset about this. You know, it's the accusatory tone, right? So being aware of your tone is pretty important as well. Okay, no other questions so far. Cool. So we talked a little bit about communication and talking about, you know, restarting negotiations for poly partners. Do you guys have any other questions right now that I can answer while we're waiting for somebody to hopefully call in? No, not so far. That's all right. I want to say thanks again for everybody who's joining me on my first premiere episode of this. It's pretty awesome. You guys are awesome, and I love you. Thank you. I think you guys are awesome too, like I just said. But I appreciate you guys saying it back. It's nice. So I had a very interesting conversation today on Instagram, which I was hoping to stream this live to today, but of course we had tech issues and the Instagram would not go live, unfortunately, which is very disappointing. But hopefully anybody who's trying to check it out on Instagram came and checked it out on one of the other platforms. But we were sort of talking about abortion and women's rights. And I get into a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean at least once a week I get into a heated debate with somebody on Instagram about abortion and women's rights. And it never fails to amaze me that a lot of people don't really understand a lot about abortion or how it works or anything like that. There's sort of this prevailing notion that abortions happen, you know, whenever, if you know, abortions were legal, they can happen whenever, and it doesn't matter how far along the baby is. And it's like, well, actually, no, in many places it's pretty much, you know, the limitations are like the same as when you know, as when the possibility of a miscarriage would happen, which, in case anybody doesn't know, miscarriage is technically a spontaneous abortion. But it's interesting how many people don't actually know that, and how many other options there are for, you know, reducing frequency of abortions, including comprehensive sex ed, which I am obviously a humongous advocate of. So yeah, it was a very interesting conversation. If you like reading those kind of debates, please feel free to check out my Instagram. Like I said, I have one at least once a week, and there's some doozies on there. We've had some crazy abortion debates. Sorry, I'm just checking to see if we have any more questions in the comments, but not much yet, and that's okay. So I've got about 20 minutes left. In case nobody calls in, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you want to hear about in terms of sex, relationships? Anything related to that is good. Otherwise, I'll just choose something and ramble on till somebody calls in with a question. No, nothing yet. Nothing yet. That's cool. Yeah, I tried to promote this show on Facebook with a Facebook ad, and Facebook is a strange place, and they wouldn't actually let me pay to promote the show, which is always a little frustrating. It's amazing with advertising how challenging it is to promote anything with the word sex in it, even sex education. Like, it's really hard to get ads approved for sex ed, which is actually part of the inspiration for me calling this show Let's Talk About Shh. And also it's kind of a throwback to, you know, that 90s song that I love that is super appropriate, that I won't sing for you guys, but you know the one I'm talking about. But yeah, so like I said, if you guys can share, yeah, I know it's in my head too, but I won't sing it for you. It's okay. My singing voice is a little rusty. I'm not gonna torture you guys that way. Anyway, but yeah, so it's funny, actually, that was the inspiration for the name of the show, but it was my goal this year to actually launch a podcast. And then when I started doing the live streams, I was like, oh man, I should just do a live stream and turn it into a podcast, because that would be way cooler. And then we could have people call in with their issues and or questions or whatever. And yeah, and then go from it that way. But the original inspiration for the podcast, I don't know if you guys ever listened to this, but this was like my first sex education was, it was a radio show called Sex, Lies, and Audio Tape. And I don't remember what station it was on, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of the woman who did it, but it was a call-in show, and she would call in and give people advice, you know, about sex and relationships. And that was my first sex ed. I love that show. It used to air at like midnight, and I used to like sneak up to listen to it, even though I was supposed to be in bed long since then. But yeah. I just have a comment on Facebook talking about the pregnancy and people who run their mouth. And yeah, pregnancy can be a super, super touchy subject for people because you don't know, you know. People have had miscarriages, people can't conceive, people have had all sorts of issues. So it can be a sensitive subject, and it's definitely one of those things where, you know, if you don't know somebody's history, maybe you should just be careful what you say. Because, you know, it can be quite upsetting, and there's a lot of pressure. People feel a lot of pressure from their families, from society, particularly women can get a lot of pressure for babies, and that can be what defines their womanhood, right? So it can be extra sensitive for people. So it's a pretty challenging topic. I wish we had a much different societal take on pregnancy and stuff. Pardon me. Sorry, I'm just gonna have a little water because I've been talking for a while. But yeah, the societal standards we have around pregnancy and what's okay and what's not okay in terms of what we can talk about and what we can tell women to do is pretty interesting. When I say interesting, I mean problematic for the most part. I think that a lot of problems that we experience as a society would probably be eliminated if we were if we handled pregnancy and sex ed differently. Because yeah, a lot of people get a lot of baggage from expectations, and they feel like they're failures or whatever, what have you. So it's definitely a lot more of a sensitive topic than most people realize. One of the things just thinking about the whole pregnancy script, one of the things I definitely would like to see more of is, and one of the things I do advocate for is encouraging women to think of their roles as more than just mothers. Motherhood, I think, is wonderful, and for anyone who chooses that as part of their life, I think that's great. You know, all the power to you. That's amazing. But it shouldn't be the automatic definition. There's lots of women out there for a variety of health reasons cannot have children, or don't want children even. So when we push the whole thing of women being defined purely as mothers, and you know, as an achievement is to start a family, that makes a lot of women feel bad. And, you know, that's not okay. There's a lot more to life than having kids. Having kids is wonderful, but there's definitely there's other choices, right? Just like lots of people, well, most generally cisgendered men have lots of other choices. Other people should have choices too, right? Wow, it never fails to amaze me. The stream quality on YouTube is so different than every other platform. You think it would be better, but for some strange reason, quality just isn't the same. Don't know why. Exact same settings should be the same, but it's not. That's okay. So just checking the comments. I appreciate you guys chiming in. Makes me feel like I'm not totally alone here, which is nice. Yeah, so we sort of chatted about a couple different topics now today, which is great. Yes, fur kids. I love my fur children. Actually, I have a fur child and a scaly child. Got a cat and a snake. Used to have ferrets, which are fantastic. I'm not encouraging everybody to get ferrets. They're definitely like a certain type of people kind of pet. And yes, there's definitely way more to human existence than fulfilling those biological needs. And the important thing, too, is I think that in a world like we have today, there's lots of people already. And sure, lots of people, you know, want to adopt. But there's also lots of kids that still need to be adopted. So, you know, I think that it's not automatically a default that everyone needs to have children. We're definitely not in a position where, you know, humanity like needs more population, right? If anything, we could probably use a little less people, and that would probably do better for the planet. Not that I'm saying that, you know, we should do anything about that specifically, but just choose to be responsible about the kid thing. Thank you, Amanda, for saying that this is going great and that you're happy to see it get off the ground. I am as well. I originally wanted to launch this about a month ago, but unfortunately, tech issues, getting the whole phone thing set up was a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be. But here we are. And yeah, I mean, a good portion of the show and a good portion of a lot of the sex ed I do is reducing that stigma around talking about sex. There's absolutely nothing to be ashamed about talking about sex at all. It's so natural. We would literally not be here without it. And, you know, it's important that people learn about it. You know, we learn about so many other things. And I always think it's strange that people don't think they need to learn about things like relationships and sex and communication because they're like, oh, well, that's just something people know. And I was like, yeah. As an educator who, you know, I educate anybody from like, I see some of the programs that I speak at, the youngest is probably about 14. So anywhere from like 14 to say 45, I guess, is usually like the age range of people that I interact with either through classes, online, you know, sending me messages via social media for help. And I can tell you, like, people don't just know stuff. There's lots of stuff that people don't know, and lots of stuff that's really important for people to know. You know, and the thing is, like, we don't teach people, and people learn all sorts of horrible things from like either teen magazines or porn, to be honest. Research has actually found that teen magazines is the leading source for information for young girls, and for young men it's porn, which is horrible because neither of those things are supposed to be educational. There's nothing wrong with them, you know, either of them. They're entertaining and, you know, they can be fun, but they're not educational. They don't show the reality of things. Yeah, the plan is to release every episode as well as a podcast. I'm just going to actually just take it, convert it to an audio, and release it on like Podbean and stuff. So you guys will be able to really listen to them. I'm also planning on posting them on my website as well. So you'll actually be able to see the full video, which will probably be better once, you know, we actually have some callers and it's not just me rambling on about things. But you guys seem to be enjoying what I'm saying, so that works. We've only got a few minutes left. So I think might be a good time to start the wrap up. So like I said, I am going to be broadcasting every day during this COVID crisis. Monday, well, not every day, sorry, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, 8 p.m. Definitely on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. I was hoping for Instagram. It didn't work today. Hopefully we'll maybe be able to get it to work for tomorrow or sometime this week. I'll have to figure out what was happening with that. But yeah, so be sure to tune in. Please share. Especially since Facebook is really weird and won't let me do ads for it. So yeah, if you are looking for more, I do have an online membership portal, which is the Sexy Hero Society. It is a paid membership. It gives you access to lots of extra content, things like relationship challenges, podcasts. You get coloring pages. You get I post a different sex position every month where it, you know, teaches you a different position, shows you the best practices for it. You know, there's extra games, all that kind of stuff. It is $20 a month, and all the proceeds go to support, you know, sex ed and furthering sex ed, and a lot of it goes into resources that I use for some of the classes that I teach for younger people. So all around, it's pretty awesome. Highly recommend. And yeah, I hope that hopefully tomorrow we'll get some callers. If not, I promise I will continue delivering some really good information for you guys every day. So I think we'll call it for today, a few minutes early. Thank you so much to everybody who joined today. I really appreciate it, like, so much. You have no idea. And I hope to see you all again tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get some more people on. Okay, take care, everybody. Have a good night.